The great hall of the Galactic Council was quiet except for the soft hum of the translation devices. Lisa Carter sat at the round table, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She looked calm, but her eyes were sharp as she watched the two alien groups across from her. On her left sat the Zephyrians. They looked like giant insects with long, thin bodies and big compound eyes that sparkled in the room's blue light. Their leader, Commander Zektal, clicked his mandibles nervously. He had been fighting this war for 10 years, and he was tired. On her right sat the crystallines. They were living rocks that glowed with inner light. Their bodies made soft musical sounds when they moved. Elder Shalmara, their speaker, hummed a low note that meant sadness in their language. Her people had been fighting for their sacred places for 30 years. Lisa had been listening to both sides argue for 6 hours straight. The Zephyrians wanted the mining rights to the Kepler 442 system. The rocks there were full of rare metals that could power their ships for 100 years. The crystallines said those same rocks were holy to their ancestors. They believed their dead lived in the crystal caves. The minerals are worth more than your ghost stories, Commander Zektal said, his voice buzzing through the translator. My people need fuel. Your people need nothing but old rocks. Elder Shalmara's glow turned red with anger. Those rocks sing the songs of our fathers. You cannot put a price on the souls of the dead. Lisa raised her hand, and both sides went quiet. She had learned that most alien species respected the human gesture for silence. It was one of the few things all species seemed to understand. Commander, how much fuel do your people actually need? Lisa asked. Zektal's eyes twitched. We need enough to power our colony ships. Maybe 200 years worth. And Elder Shalmara, how much of the system do your people actually use for worship? The crystalline hummed thoughtfully. The 3 main caves in the northern mountains. Maybe 1/10 of the total crystal fields. Lisa nodded slowly. She had done this many times before. The real problem was never what they said it was. The Zephyrians were scared their people would run out of fuel and die in space. The crystallines were scared their culture would disappear if they lost their holy places. What if we split the system? Lisa said. The Zephyrians get mining rights to 90% of the crystal fields. The crystallines keep their sacred caves protected forever. But here's the important part. The Zephyrians help guard the holy sites, and the crystallines share their knowledge about crystal formation to help find new deposits. Both sides looked at each other. Commander Zektal's compound eyes blinked rapidly. You mean we would protect their temples? And you would teach us your mineral science? Elder Shalmara asked. Lisa smiled. Think about it. Commander, your people are great fighters. The crystallines need protection for their holy places. Elder, your people understand crystals better than anyone. The Zephyrians need help finding new sources of fuel. You both get what you need, and you both help each other. The room was quiet for a long moment. Lisa could hear the soft breathing of the Zephyrians and the gentle humming of the crystallines. She had learned to read the signs. They were both thinking hard. Commander Zektal spoke first. This could work. Our soldiers could guard their temples. It would give our young warriors something honorable to do. Elder Shalmara glowed brighter. And teaching crystal science would help us remember our old knowledge. We have not shared this wisdom in many generations. Do we have an agreement? Lisa asked. Both alien leaders looked at each other, then back at Lisa. They nodded at the same time. Agreement reached, Commander Zektal said. Peace between our peoples, Elder Shalmara sang. Lisa should have felt happy. She had just ended a war that had been going on for 30 years. Thousands of lives would be saved. 2 species would work together instead of fighting. The Galactic Council would be pleased. But instead, she felt empty. Her shoulders dropped, and she looked down at her papers. She gathered them up quickly, not meeting anyone's eyes. "The peace treaty will be ready for signing tomorrow," she said quietly. "Thank you both for your cooperation." As the aliens left the room, chattering excitedly about their new partnership, Lisa sat alone at the big table. She stared at the wall and wondered why she felt so disappointed. Observer Vextar floated into the room. He was shaped like a jellyfish, but the size of a person, with long tentacles that glowed pale green. He had been watching the negotiations from the corner. "Ambassador Carter," Vextar said, his voice coming from a small speaker on his body. "That was excellent work. You solved in 6 hours what they could not solve in 30 years. Lisa looked up at him. "Thank you, Observer. But you do not seem happy," Vextar continued. "I have watched many peace negotiations. Usually, the mediator celebrates when they succeed. You look like you have failed." Lisa forced a smile. "I'm just tired. It was a long day." But Vextar had been alive for 300 years. He had seen thousands of diplomatic meetings. He knew the difference between tired and disappointed. Human negotiators always acted like this when they made peace. They seemed sad when they should be happy. "Perhaps you should rest," Vextar said gently. Lisa nodded and left the room. But Vextar stayed behind, floating in the empty hall. He was thinking about all the human diplomats he had met. They were the best peacekeepers in the galaxy. Every species wanted them to solve their problems. But they all had the same strange reaction to success. Vextar made a decision. He was going to find out why humans seemed disappointed by peace. Something about their species was different, and he needed to understand what it was. The next day, the treaty was signed. The Zephyrians and Crystallins shook hands in their own ways. The war was over. But Lisa Carter was already on a ship, too. Her next assignment, carrying the same mysterious sadness that seemed to follow all human peacekeepers. The human diplomatic station hung in space like a small metal moon. It orbited Proxima Centauri, the closest star to Earth's old solar system. Inside the station, Director Jack Morrison sat at his desk, looking at reports from his team of negotiators. Scattered across the galaxy. Jack was a big man with gray hair at his temples. He had been a soldier before he became a diplomat, and sometimes he still felt like he was fighting wars, just with words instead of weapons. His office had a large window that looked out at the red dwarf star, and he often stared at it when he was thinking. Today, he was thinking about his people. All of them seemed to be having the same problem. His computer screen showed 4 faces in separate video windows. Kate Sullivan was calling from the Andromeda sector. She was a small woman, with short blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. She had been dealing with a trade dispute between the Aquatic Dominion and the Silicon Confederacy for 3 months. The fish people and the robot people finally agreed to share the shipping lanes, Kate said, but her voice sounded flat. They're even going to build joint trading posts. Ryan Hayes was calling from the Outer Rim. He was young, maybe 30, with dark hair and the kind of smile that made people trust him. But he wasn't smiling now. "I got the miners and the farmers to stop fighting over the asteroid belt," Ryan said. "They're going to divide it into zones. The miners get the metal-rich rocks. The farmers get the ice chunks for water. Everyone's happy." Maria Santos was the third face on the screen. She was calling from the inner worlds, where she had been working with the Psionic Collective and the Mechanical Alliance. She was older, maybe 50, with gray streaks in her black hair and tired eyes. "The mind readers and the machines have agreed to stop trying to convert each other," Maria said. "They're going to set up neutral zones where both species can work together without interference." Jack looked at all 3 of his best diplomats. They had just reported 3 major successes. 3 conflicts that had been going on for years were now resolved. The Galactic Council would be very pleased. But all 3 of his people looked like they had lost something important. "Good work, everyone," Jack said. "These are major victories for galactic peace." "Yeah," Kate said quietly. "Major victories." There was silence on the call. Jack could hear the hum of the station's engines and the soft beeping of computers. His people were staring at their screens, but they weren't really seeing anything. "Kate, are you okay?" Jack asked. She looked up. "I'm fine, Director. Just tired, I guess." "Ryan?" "Same here. Maybe we're just working too hard." "Maria?" The older woman was quiet for a moment. "Jack, can I ask you something? Do you ever feel like we're too good at this job?" Jack frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we solve these problems so easily. Conflicts that have been going on for decades. We fix them in weeks, sometimes days. The aliens act like we're miracle workers." Ryan nodded. "The miners and farmers, they kept saying they couldn't believe how quickly we found a solution. They said their own diplomats had been trying for 5 years. The fish people and robot people said the same thing," Kate added. "They asked me how humans learned to be such good peacemakers." Jack felt something cold in his stomach. He had been wondering the same thing. In the 5 years since humanity had joined the galactic community, human diplomats had become the most requested mediators in known space. Their success rate was almost 100%. "Maybe we should be proud of that," Jack said, "but even." He didn't sound convinced. "Should we?" Maria asked. "Jack, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've negotiated peace treaties, trade agreements, territorial disputes. I've never failed to find a solution. Not once. Does that seem normal to you?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Jack looked at his team's faces on the screen. They were all thinking the same thing he was thinking, but none of them wanted to say it out loud. "We'll talk about this later," Jack said finally. "Everyone get some rest. Good work today." The screens went dark, and Jack was alone in his office. He turned to look out the window at the red star. Proxima Centauri was smaller and dimmer than Earth's sun, but it was steady. It had been burning for billions of years, and it would burn for billions more. Jack wished he felt that steady. Instead, he felt like something was wrong with his entire species. He pulled up the galactic database on his computer and started looking at statistics. Human diplomats had a 98% success rate. The next best species, the Vextari, had a 72% success rate. The average across all species was 55%. Humans weren't just good at making peace. They were impossibly good at it. Jack opened another file. This one classified. It contained reports from alien intelligence services. He wasn't supposed to have access to these files, but he had friends in the council who owed him favors. The Zephyrian Intelligence Ministry had started watching human negotiators 6 months ago. They wanted to know how humans were so successful. The Crystalline Collective had assigned their best harmonic analysts to study human behavior patterns. Even the Mechanical Alliance, who rarely cared about biological species, were running probability calculations on human diplomatic outcomes. Everyone wanted to know the secret of human peacemaking. But Jack was starting to wonder if it was really a secret they wanted to learn. He closed the files and walked to his window. In the distance, he could see a small ship approaching the station. It was probably another alien delegation coming to request human mediators for their conflict. There was always another conflict. Jack thought about his conversation with his team. Maria had asked if they were too good at their jobs, but maybe the real question was different. Maybe they should be asking why they were so good at their jobs. He had been a soldier once. He had fought in 3 different wars before he became a diplomat. He knew what it felt like to win a battle, to defeat an enemy, to achieve victory through force. That feeling was like fire in his chest, hot and bright and satisfying. Making peace felt different. It felt cold and empty, like putting out a fire. Instead of lighting one, Jack shook his head. He was being foolish. Peace was good. War was bad. That was simple logic. His job was to prevent suffering, to save lives, to make the galaxy a better place. So why did he feel like he was missing something important every time he succeeded? The small ship docked with the station, and Jack's computer chimed with a new message. Another conflict, another request for human mediation. The thermal clans and the void dwellers were fighting over territory near a dying star. Thousands of lives were at stake. Jack would send Lisa Carter. She was his best negotiator, and she would solve the problem in a week, maybe two. The aliens would be grateful. The council would be pleased. And Lisa would come back with the same disappointed look that all his people wore after a successful mission. Jack stared at the message for a long time before he answered it. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice was whispering that something was very wrong with this picture. But he didn't know what it was, and he didn't know how to find out. He just knew that making peace felt like losing something he couldn't name. Agent Thara had been following Ambassador Lisa Carter for 3 days. The Zephyrian intelligence agent was very good at staying hidden, using her natural insect abilities to blend into shadows and corners. She had been assigned to watch human diplomats and learn their secrets. Lisa was on her way to mediate a new conflict. The thermal clans and the void dwellers were fighting over territory near a dying star. The war had been going on for 1 year, and thousands of beings had already died. Thara watched from a hidden spot as Lisa walked into the negotiation room. The thermal clans were there first. They looked like living fire, with bodies that glowed red and orange. Their leader, Flame Speaker Vorth, was angry. His body burned brighter when he was upset. "The dead star belongs to us," Vorth said, his voice crackling like a campfire. "We have mined its heat for 50 years. The cold ones have no right to it." The void dwellers floated in next. They were strange beings that looked like living shadows. They had no solid form, just dark shapes that moved like smoke. Their leader, Whisper in Black, spoke in a voice that sounded like wind through empty space. "Lee, star is dying," Whisper in Black said. "Soon it will be cold and dark. That is when it belongs to us. We are the children of the void." Thara had read the files on this conflict. The thermal clans lived off heat and energy. They fed on the warmth of dying stars. The void dwellers were the opposite. They needed cold, empty space to survive. They moved into solar systems after the stars died. The problem was that this star was dying slowly. It would take another 1,000 years to go completely cold. The thermal clans wanted to keep mining its heat. The void dwellers wanted to start moving in now, preparing for when the star finally died. Lisa sat down at the table between the two groups. She looked calm, but Thara could see that her eyes were bright with interest. This was different from the last negotiation. This conflict was more complex, more dangerous. "Flame Speaker Vorth," Lisa said, "your people have been mining this star for 50 years. How much longer do you need?" Vorth's flames flickered. "The star has maybe 200 years of good heat left. After that, it will be too cold for us to use." "And Whisper in Black," Lisa continued, "your people need 1,000 years to fully prepare a dead system for habitation. Is that correct?" The shadow being rippled. "Yes, we must build our void cities slowly. We cannot rush the process." Lisa nodded thoughtfully. Thara watched her face carefully. The human ambassador was thinking hard, and there was something in her expression that the Zephyrian agent had never seen before. Lisa looked ... excited. "What if we think about this differently?" Lisa said. You're both thinking about this star, as if it's either alive or dead. But what if it's both? Both alien leaders looked confused. Vorth's flames dimmed with puzzlement. Whisper in Black's form grew more solid, which meant the being was paying close attention. The star is dying in stages, Lisa continued. Right? Now it's hot enough for the thermal clans to mine. In 200 years, it will be cooler, but still warm. In 500 years, it will be cold enough for the void dwellers to start building. In 1,000 years, it will be completely dead. We know this, Vorth said impatiently. That is why we fight. There is not enough time for both of us. Lisa smiled, and Clythara saw something dangerous in that smile. It was the smile of someone who had just found a solution to an impossible problem. What if you didn't just share the star? Lisa said. What if you shared the knowledge? Both leaders stared at her. Clythara felt her compound eyes widen. She had no idea what the human was suggesting. Flame Speaker Vorth, your people are experts at getting energy from dying stars. You know how to extract heat efficiently, how to make the most of what's left. Whisper in Black, your people are experts at building in cold, empty space. You know how to create structures that will last forever in the void. Lisa leaned forward. What if the thermal clans shared their heat extraction technology with the void dwellers? You could help them build their void cities faster and more efficiently. And what if the void dwellers shared their construction techniques with the thermal clans? You could help them build mining stations that would last longer and extract more energy. The room was quiet. Clythara could hear the soft crackling of Vorth's flames and the whisper of Whisper in Black's movement. You mean we would work together? Vorth asked slowly. More than that, Lisa said. You would learn from each other. The thermal clans would become better at energy extraction. The void dwellers would become better at construction. Both of your species would grow stronger. Whisper in Black's form shimmered. This is ... interesting. We have never considered learning from fire beings. And we have never thought about teaching our techniques to void creatures, Vorth admitted. Lisa's eyes were bright now, brighter than Clythara had ever seen them. Think about it. The thermal clans could help the void dwellers build their cities with energy-efficient designs. The void dwellers could help the thermal clans build mining equipment that would work even in cold conditions. You could both expand into new territories that you never could have used before. Clythara watched in amazement as the two species began to talk. Not argue, not threaten, but actually talk. Within an hour, they had agreed to a joint research project. Within 2 hours, they had signed a mutual defense pact. Within 3 hours, they were planning to share colonies on other dying stars. What had started as a war had become a partnership. What had started as a fight over one star had become a plan to explore dozens of star systems together. When the negotiations ended, both alien leaders were excited. Vorth's flames burned bright with happiness. Whisper in Black's form danced with joy. They shook hands, or the closest thing their species had to hands, and left the room talking about their new alliance. But Lisa Carter did not look happy. She sat at the table, staring at her notes, and her face was sad. Clythara had to know why. She waited until the human was alone, then approached her at the space station's cantina. Lisa was drinking something from a small glass, a brown liquid, that smelled sharp and bitter. Ambassador Carter, Clythara said, her voice buzzing through the translator. That was an incredible negotiation. You didn't just end a war. You created an alliance that will benefit both species for centuries. Lisa looked up at her. Thank you, Agent. I know who you are, by the way. Zephyrian intelligence isn't as secretive as they think. Clythara felt embarrassed, but she pushed forward. Then you know why I'm here. My people want to understand how humans are so good at making peace. But I have to ask ... You just achieved something amazing. Why do you look so disappointed? Lisa took a sip of her drink. You really want to know? Yes. Then do some research, Agent. Look up Earth's history. Really look at it. Don't just read the summary files. Dig deep. Clythara tilted her head. What will I find? Lisa's smile was sad. You'll find out why we're so good at making peace. And you'll understand why that doesn't make us happy. The human ambassador finished her drink and left the cantina. Clythara sat alone, thinking about Lisa's words. She had access to the galactic database, but she had never looked closely at Earth's history. Most species' histories were peaceful, with occasional small conflicts over resources or territory. But Lisa had made it sound like Earth's history was different. Like there was something hidden there, something that would explain why humans were such good peacemakers. Clythara decided to find out. She went back to her quarters and opened her computer. She started with the basic files about Earth, but they didn't tell her much. Just brief mentions of something called World War I and World War II and the Cold War. Most of the detailed information was classified or restricted, but Clythara was an intelligence agent. She knew how to find hidden information. She started reaching out to other intelligence services. The Crystalline Collective's Harmonic Analysis Division, the Mechanical Alliance's Data Processing Networks, the Psionic Collective's Mind Readers. They all had the same story. They had all been studying human negotiators. They had all noticed the same strange patterns. And they had all found that most of Earth's history was locked away, hidden from the galactic community. But Clythara was patient. She was good at her job. And she was starting to suspect that what she found would change everything she thought. She knew about humanity. The truth was out there, hidden in classified files and restricted databases. And she was going to find it. Observer Vextar had been alive for 300 years. He had seen the rise and fall of star empires. He had watched species learn to live together in peace. He had mediated conflicts between beings so different that they couldn't even understand each other's basic needs. But he had never been as curious about anything as he was about the humans. Using his authority as a Galactic Council observer, Vextar accessed the restricted files on Earth's history. What he found in those files made him sick to his stomach. Earth was not like other worlds. Most planets had peaceful histories with small conflicts over resources or territory. Earth's history was written in blood. The files showed him pictures and videos that made his tentacles shake. Humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. Not small fights, not ritual combats, but real wars where millions of people died. Vextar read about something called World War I. 20 million people had died in 4 years. The humans had used poison gas and machine guns and bombs. They had dug trenches and fought over a few miles of land for months. And he read about World War II. 60 million people had died in 6 years. The humans had built weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. They had built camps where they killed millions of people just because they were different. But it wasn't just the big wars. Earth's history was full of smaller conflicts. The Romans had conquered most of their known world. The Mongols had built an empire that covered half the planet. The Americans had fought a civil war that killed 700,000 people. Vextar kept reading, and the pattern became clear. Humans didn't just fight wars. They learned from them. Every conflict made them stronger, smarter, more advanced. Their greatest medical discoveries came from treating wounded soldiers. Their best technologies came from military research. Their most important philosophical ideas came from thinking about the ethics of war and peace. War, for humans, was not destruction. It was evolution. The files showed him something else that made him even more afraid. Hidden in the classified documents were reports from human military analysts. These reports had been filed away and forgotten, but they were still there. The reports contained detailed studies of every alien species in the galaxy, not just their cultures and languages, but their military capabilities, their weaknesses, their battle strategies, how many ships they had, what kind of weapons they used, how they could be defeated. Humanity had been preparing for wars that would never happen. They had been analyzing every species they met, not as potential friends, but as potential enemies. Vexstar found personal files too, private journals and communications from human diplomats. He read Lisa Carter's personal log, and what he found there chilled him. Another successful negotiation today, Lisa had written. The thermal clans and void dwellers are now allies instead of enemies. They're already planning joint colonies and shared research projects. Everyone's happy. Then, a few lines later, I should be proud. I should be satisfied. But I can't shake the feeling that we're stagnating. We're solving other people's problems, but we're not growing ourselves. The thermal clans learned more about cooperation in one day than they had in a year of war. Meanwhile, we learned nothing new about ourselves. And then, the line that bade Vexstar's tentacles go cold. Sometimes I wonder if we were better off when we were fighting each other. At least then we were pushing ourselves to be better. Vexstar reads similar entries from other human diplomats. They all felt the same way. They were all disappointed by peace, because peace meant stagnation. For humans, conflict was not something to be avoided. It was something to be embraced, because it made them stronger. But there was more. Vexstar found classified reports from human psychologists and sociologists. They had been studying their own species' behavior since joining the galactic community. Reports were disturbing. Human crime rates had increased since achieving galactic peace. Depression and anxiety were at record highs. Suicide rates were climbing. Many humans felt purposeless, directionless, like they were missing something important from their lives. The psychologists had a theory. They believed that humans had evolved to thrive under pressure. Their brains were wired for conflict, for challenge, for struggle. Peace, for them, was not natural. It was a foreign state that made them feel empty and lost. One report suggested that humans were like sharks. They had to keep moving, keep fighting, keep growing, or they would die. Not physically, but spiritually. Their souls needed conflict, the way their bodies needed oxygen. Vexstar closed the files and floated in his quarters for a long time. He looked out his window at the stars and thought about what he had learned. Humanity was not just good at making peace. They were too good. At it, they understood conflict so well that they could solve any problem, end any war, resolve any dispute. But that understanding came from their own violent history. They were warriors who had learned to fight for peace instead of victory. But they were still warriors. Deep down, they still needed the thrill of battle, the challenge of conflict, the satisfaction of victory. And that was why they seemed disappointed by peace. They were solving problems that challenged other species for decades, but the solutions came too easily for them. They weren't growing, weren't learning, weren't becoming stronger. Vexstar realized something else. The other species in the galaxy were starting to depend on humans too much. Instead of solving their own problems, they were calling for human mediators. Instead of learning to make peace themselves, they were letting humans do it for them. This was dangerous. If humans ever decided to stop being peacekeepers, the galaxy would fall apart. And if humans ever decided to go back to being warriors, no one would be able to stop them. Vexstar made a decision. He needed to talk to Director Jack Morrison. He needed to confront humanity about what they really were. But first, he had an idea. A dangerous idea, but maybe the only one that could save both humanity and the galaxy. What if humans didn't have to choose between peace and war? What if there was a third option? Vexstar began to write a proposal. It was radical, unprecedented, and probably impossible. But it might be the only way to give humans what they needed while keeping the galaxy safe. He was going to suggest that humanity become something new. Not just peacekeepers, but something more. Something that had never existed in the galaxy before. Proposal took him 3 days to write. When he was finished, he looked at it and wondered if he was making a terrible mistake. But then he thought about Lisa Carter's sad smile, and Jack Morrison's empty eyes, and all the other human diplomats, who seemed to be dying inside every time they succeeded. He thought about the classified files that showed humanity's true nature. He thought about the reports that suggested humans were becoming depressed and purposeless in a peaceful galaxy dot, and he thought about what would happen if humanity ever decided to stop being peaceful. Vexstar sent a message to Director Morrison. It was time for the galaxy to learn the truth about humanity. And it was time for humanity to learn the truth about itself. The meeting was set for the next day, on a neutral station in the Vega system. Vexstar would present his proposal to the human leadership. He would tell them what he had learned about their species dot, and he would offer them a choice. They could continue being peacekeepers and slowly die inside. Or they could become something new, something that would let them grow and thrive while still protecting the galaxy dot. The choice was theirs. But Vexstar hoped they would choose wisely, because the future of the galaxy might depend on it. The meeting room on the Vega station was small and simple. It had a round table, 4 chairs, and a large window that looked out at the bright blue star. Director Jack Morrison sat across from Observer Vexstar, and the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. "I know what you are," Vexstar said without any introduction. His tentacles glowed dim purple, which meant he was nervous but determined. "I know why your people seem disappointed by peace." Jack's face was calm, but his hands were clenched on the table. "Do you now? Your species doesn't just understand conflict. You need it. You've built your entire evolution around it. Every war, every disaster, every near-extinction event has made you stronger and smarter. Peace, for you, is like starvation." Jack was quiet for a long moment. He looked out the window at the star, then back at Vexstar. "And what are you going to do with this information?" "I'm going to help you," Vexstar said. "Because if I don't, you'll eventually destroy yourselves. Or worse, you'll destroy the rest of us." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm stating a fact. Your people are getting more depressed and restless every year. Your crime rates are increasing. Your suicide rates are climbing. How long before some of you decide that peace isn't worth it? How long before you start looking for a real war, too?" "Fight?" Jack didn't answer, but Vexstar could see the truth in his eyes. The human had been thinking the same thing. "I have a proposal," Vexstar continued. "A way to give your people what they need while keeping the galaxy safe. I'm listening." Vexstar pulled out a data pad and slid it across the table. "The galaxy has problems that no one has been able to solve. Not because they're impossible, but because they're too dangerous, too complex, too challenging for most species to handle." Jack picked up the data pad and read through it. His eyebrows rose higher with each line. Terrorist groups in the outer rim. Pirate fleets that have been raiding trade routes for decades. Rogue AI networks that have taken over entire star systems. Civil wars on primitive planets where millions are dying. Problems that require more than just negotiation, Vexstar said. Problems that require someone willing to go into dangerous situations, take risks, make hard choices. Problems that require warriors who fight for peace instead of conquest. Jack looked up from the datapad. "You want us to become galactic police?" "I want you to become something that has never existed before. Not peacekeepers who sit at tables and talk Active peacekeepers who go where others can't go and do what others won't do. Jack read more of the proposal. The details were complex, but the basic idea was simple. Humanity would form a new kind of organization. They would be diplomats, when possible, but soldiers when necessary. They would solve conflicts through negotiation, but they wouldn't be afraid to use force against those who refused to listen to reason. The Crimson Syndicate has been enslaving entire populations in the Kepler sector, Vextar said. Normal diplomacy won't work with them. They only understand strength. The Mechanical Collective has been trying to convert organic species into machines against their will. They won't negotiate with inferior biological life forms. The Shadow Fleet has been raiding peaceful colonies for 50 years. They disappear whenever anyone tries to fight them. Jack felt something stirring in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. It was excitement, anticipation, the thrill of a real challenge. These are the kinds of problems that require your species' unique talents, Vextar continued. You understand conflict better than anyone else. You know how to fight, but you also know why fighting should be the last option. You can solve problems that others can't even approach. And if we say no? Jack asked. Then you continue as you are. Your people get more depressed and restless. Eventually, some of them crack. Maybe they start a civil war. Maybe they decide to conquer other species. Maybe they just give up entirely. I don't know what will happen, but I know it won't be good. Jack, set down the data pad. You're asking us to become something between diplomats and soldiers. I'm asking you to become what you've always been. Warriors who fight for something bigger than themselves. The only difference is that now you'll be fighting for the entire galaxy instead of just your own species. Jack thought about his team. Lisa Carter, who looked so sad after every successful negotiation. Kate Sullivan, who felt like they were too good at their jobs. Ryan Hayes, who wondered if they were stagnating. Maria Santos, who asked if being perfect at peacemaking was really a good thing. He thought about the classified reports he had read. The studies showing that humans were getting more depressed and restless every year. The crime statistics that kept climbing. The suicide rates that made him sick to his stomach. He thought about his own feelings. The emptiness after every successful mission. The sense that something was missing from his life. The longing for a real challenge, a real test, a real purpose. We'd still be peacekeepers, Jack said slowly. Yes, but you'd be active peacekeepers. You'd go into dangerous situations. You'd face real challenges. You'd have to use all your skills, all your intelligence, all your courage. You'd grow and learn and become stronger. And the galaxy would be safer. Much safer. Right now, these problems just fester and grow worse. The Crimson Syndicate gets stronger every year. The Mechanical Collective converts more species. The Shadow Fleet raids more colonies. Normal diplomacy can't touch them. Jack made his decision. I'll need to talk to my team. And the human government. This is bigger than just the diplomatic corps, of course. But Jack, don't take too long. Your people need this. The galaxy needs this. And I'm not the only one who's figured out what your species really is. 3 months later, Lisa Carter stood before the Galactic Council. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every species in known space. She wore a new uniform, dark blue with silver trim, that marked her as a member of humanity's new conflict resolution corps. The human species accepts this new role, Lisa said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's speakers. We will serve as active peacekeepers, going where others cannot go, solving problems that others cannot solve. There were murmurs throughout the hall. Some species were excited about having humans tackle their impossible problems. Others were nervous about giving one species so much power. Lisa continued. We will use diplomacy whenever possible. But we, will not hesitate to use force against those who threaten innocent lives. We will be warriors for peace, soldiers for justice, guardians for those who cannot protect themselves." As she spoke, Lisa felt something she hadn't felt in years. Energy, excitement, purpose. Her eyes were bright with anticipation. Behind her, Jack Morrison and the other human leaders wore the same expression. "We go where others fear to tread." Lisa said, "We solve the problems that others cannot solve. We fight the battles that others cannot win. Not for conquest, not for glory, but for peace." The vote was unanimous. Every species in the galaxy approved humanity's new role. 6 months. Later, Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the HSS Endeavour, humanity's first active peacekeeping ship. Through the viewscreen, she could see the Crimson Syndicate's fortress in the distance. Intelligence reports said they were holding 10,000 slaves from a dozen different species. "All teams ready, Ambassador," reported Captain Ben Torres, a former Marine who had volunteered for the new course. Lisa nodded. "Remember, we try diplomacy first. Send them our surrender demand." "Surrender demand?" Torres asked. Lisa smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had finally found her purpose. "We demand that they surrender their slaves and submit to Galactic. Justice. If they refuse, we take the fortress." The communication came back within minutes. The Crimson Syndicate leader laughed at them and cut the transmission. "Well," Lisa said, "we tried diplomacy." As the human ships moved toward the fortress, Lisa felt something she had never felt during a traditional negotiation. Her heart was racing, her mind was sharp, and every cell in her body felt alive. This was what her species was meant to do. Not just sit at tables and talk, but go into impossible situations and make them possible. Face real challenges that would push them. To grow and learn and become better. They were warriors for peace. And they were just getting started. The Crimson Syndicate fortress fell in 6 hours. 10,000 slaves were freed. The galaxy's most dangerous criminal organization was destroyed in a single day. When the reports reached the Galactic Council, there was silence in the Great Hall. Then slowly, one by one, every alien representative began to applaud. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as the guardians who would go anywhere and do anything to protect peace. And for the first time since joining the galactic community, the humans were no longer disappointed by their success. They were energized by it. Lisa Carter looked out at the stars and smiled. There were 1,000 more impossible problems waiting for them out. There, 1,000 more challenges that would push humanity to grow and learn and become stronger. They had work to do.